Governor, thank you so much for making a special trip to Washington with us today here at the annual State of American Energy event. You made a special trip here from Oklahoma. You are a great governor representing a great oil and gas producing state. But a little bit of background for those of you who may not know Governor Stitt. So first of all, he grew up in Norman, Oklahoma. Many of you know that Norman is the home to the University of Oklahoma, the Sooners, but he actually went to school in Stillwater, Oklahoma. He is a Oklahoma State cowboy. So he really knows the state of Oklahoma just about better than anybody. But what you may not know about Governor Stitt is that he never served in public office prior to running for governor. He ran a successful accounting business, and in a town that's filled with lawyers and lobbyists, we know that we need a lot more accountants. So Governor, thank you for being here, and welcome to the annual American State of Energy.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Just one small correction. I got an accounting degree, but the business is banking and mortgage servicing. So, but yeah, I was in the business world, never ran for office. But I think that's really what our founders envisioned, is that you would be a successful farmer, rancher, teacher, business person. You would leave that career to go serve your state or your country. And that's what I promised Oklahomans, that I was always going to focus on the next generation, not the next election. And you're free to just make the right decisions for your state or your country. And so I think that's so important for us to kind of keep in mind that we're here to try to leave our state or our country a better place and then go back to the private sector.
So let's talk a little bit about what we call the American energy advantage, that we are blessed in this country with incredible resources. We have incredible workforce here in the United States. Oklahoma is a significant oil and gas producer. I want to hear a little bit about what you think the Oklahoma energy advantage is and how we can learn from Oklahomans and the importance of that advantage that you've seen in your state.
Yeah, well, you've said it right. I mean, it's a huge advantage for our state. So Oklahoma, my vision is to be top 10 in everything that we do. We're certainly top 10 in energy. And so we've been an innovator for over 100 years. I know we've got some great companies here from Oklahoma. I think Phillips is in the room, started in Oklahoma. We've got Devon and Marathon and Williams, a great pipeline company. But Oklahoma, we're so proud of this. And I love sharing our story because we're number 6 in oil production. We're number 6 in natural gas production. But what people also don't realize is we're number 3 in wind energy. We're leaning into hydrogen. We believe that you have to have a diversified, reliable grid, and you need to have more of everything. So that's kind of our overall philosophy. So how has that helped us? So we have some of the most affordable, reliable energy in the entire country. It's led to, we're 40% lower in cost of living than other states. So that's huge. That's a huge advantage for us. Now Oklahoma is top 10 in people migrating and moving to our state. We have 4 million people. We're the 28th largest state, but true numbers now, we're top 10 in migration, people moving. And you know what state we get most people from? Anybody want to guess? California. So I meet these people from California. They'll come to me and they'll take a picture. Governor, we'll be at events around the state. We're one of the people who moved from California. I said, well, here's the deal. I had to wait 18 years to vote in Oklahoma. I'm going to make you wait 18 years before you vote in the state of Oklahoma. That's just a joke if this is being recorded, okay? I'm just kidding. But they very quickly, they say, no, we're moving here because of your pro-business, pro-freedom policies. We can see what's happening, the quality of life. Oklahoma City now is the 20th largest city in the country. So it's just amazing what's going on in our state. But, when you think about the advantage that we have, back to the energy cost, we're paying in the U.S. a third of what they do in Europe. We have an international strategy where I meet with ambassadors every time I come to D.C. and probably met with 40, 50 of them. And they're paying a third more. CEOs in Europe, they're looking for reliable, affordable energy. I mean, it's just the topic that always comes up. And the people in this room understand that. Google has their largest factory or their largest data center located in Oklahoma. One of the things also that I think is important is that energy security is really national security, and we have to make sure that we're helping our allies. That's so important, and when you see Russia-Ukraine conflicts, it just becomes more and more important for all of us. I love to say that In Oklahoma, we feed the world, so we've got top 10 agriculture. We fuel the world. We defend freedoms around the world with our Air Force bases and Tinker Air Force Base. Cushing, Oklahoma is something else I like to brag about. That's where West Texas crude is priced from. So we're the pipeline capital of the world, comes into Cushing. We have 100 million barrel storage right there. And then we've got pipelines down to the Gulf Coast where LNG is shipped to our allies out in Europe. One kind of interesting story that I think this group will find fascinating is we've always had a history of supporting our allies. And this country does that very well. Oklahoma, I want to tell you an Oklahoma story. So back in World War II, Europe, the UK was really was in the thrones of World War II, was having a oil shortage. And so we sent, it was a secret mission, we sent 42 roughnecks, those are oil workers, 4 oil rigs to the Sherwood Forest, and we drilled in a year 100 oil wells, 76 producing oil wells, and we took their production from 300 barrels a day to 3,000. And it really helped fuel the D-Day and obviously the liberation of Europe. So we have a history of that. Then, since I've been governor, we signed an MOU with the UK on energy security. We're working on that with other states as well. My job as a leader in the Republican Governor Association and the National Governor Association is also to help push some policy. So when we were at the White House talking to the president about some of these permitting reforms and things that we're doing, and just the need to let American companies innovate to meet the needs of Americans. One of the things I think is interesting, if you look at the first 19 months of all the way back to Kennedy and how much permitting in federal lands leasing was done, Reagan by far was the leader. In his first 19 months, he leased 47 million acres for exploration. Even Clinton did about 10 million in his first 19 months. Obama, I think, did about 7 million acres of leasing. This administration in their first 19 months is 126,000, okay? So we really have to take our foot off the brakes and really have an honest conversation about meeting the needs of Americans with our own resources. And we can do it, and I know groups like this are really pushing that.
Well, thank you for that. It strikes me you're really doing it all in the state of Oklahoma. Of course, you're a top oil and gas producer. In fact, the percentage of your workforce is higher of oil and gas workers than any other state in the country, almost 15%. But you're also doing it all. You're a leader in wind energy. The wind is sweeping over the plain, as they say in Oklahoma. And that great story you told about the oil field worker. There's a monument in Ardmore, Oklahoma, talking about that incredible share that we did in World War II to get oil development for our allied forces in Europe. And there's a replica of that monument in Sherwood Forest as well. You've really done it all in the state of Oklahoma. What can Washington learn from the experience that you're talking about in the state of Oklahoma?
Well, first off, I agree with you. I mean, we are doing the right thing, but when I think about the bedrock oil and gas industry is, oil and gas is the bedrock for our state for sure. And I think Washington, if we're going to talk about policies. So back to my NGA, RGA leadership role, we're working with a bipartisan group of governors right now to talk about permitting reform. And I know that's probably your senators talked about that as well. But we want to streamline the permitting process. We put forth a set of our principles out, and I think the NEPA, the rules just came out. They took a few of our recommendations, but we need to do judicial review for sure. And like all of the above approach, when you think about energy, we can't just focus. I know there's a push maybe from this administration just to talk about broadband or transmission, but really you have to include pipeline reforms. The Keystone Pipeline, for example, most people don't realize this. Y'all probably do, but I find it very interesting. When I toured Cushing with 100 million barrel storage. There's already 2 pipelines from Canada to Cushing, Oklahoma. Does everybody know that in this room? I was shocked when I found that out. So the Keystone XL was going to be the 3rd pipeline. The safest way to move oil and natural gas is through pipelines. So we need that reform done. That's something Washington can focus on. When you think about infrastructure projects, it takes us in the U.S. 6 years longer on average than it does China, India, the EU countries to do some of these pipeline things. So that's just ridiculous. We have to figure that out and have some honest conversations about getting those done. One of the CEOs that I met with just recently was telling me that they have a existing pipeline in California, and they're trying to convert it to a carbon sequestration, carbon capture, and it's going to take them 10 years to get that approved, and it's an existing pipeline. So I think we have to have some conversation about that. And as a CEO, we need reliability. We need to know what the rules are. You can't expect people to invest capital and then just kind of be in this no man's land for so long and then have these projects killed or just litigated forever and have to always start back at the beginning. So we have to talk about that. In Oklahoma, we're doing that. We are making sure that we work with industry, that we innovate. But we know there's so many bad rules right now, and I know groups like this are really pushing back on those. In Oklahoma, U.S. DOT, we've sued them on those greenhouse emissions. I mean, our transportation department should not be focused on some kind of personal agenda up here from Washington, D.C., and they should be building roads and infrastructure in Oklahoma.
So Washington's really stuck on this point. Obviously, Democrats would prefer this to be a power line only proposal for permitting reform. Republicans, of course, are pushing pipelines, but it's become so partisan here in Washington. Do you think that there's a way for states to come together to push Washington to get this stuff right?
I do think so, because even the Democrat governors, we have a very collegial group of governors when we sit down and we talk about it. And even if you believe that you need more development for transmission lines, you have to have an honest conversation about a reliable, affordable grid and all of the above approach. And I'll give you a perfect example. The polar vortex, y'all remember when that hit in 2021? Oklahoma, about 45% of our energy comes from natural gas. We have about 40% from wind in Oklahoma. We've got a little bit of coal, a little bit of solar. But during that unseasonably cold weather, and I actually told this to President Biden when I was on a call with him and Governor Abbott and myself, is that during that time, our wind turbines were frozen. So we were getting no electricity generation. And if it wasn't for natural gas and for even coal, we had to increase coal production during that time. I tell young people when I'm talking to like high schools and college students, I said, guys, if we didn't have natural gas and coal and a base load in Oklahoma, you couldn't have watched TikTok for 2 solid weeks. And they kind of look at me. But I think it's important for this industry specifically to try to teach people, when you flip your light switch on or when you plug in your electric vehicle, where does that come from? What is the generation mix? What is important for us to have a base load of natural gas in most cases? So I think we need to talk about that. We need to have honest conversations. We should not let the other side of the aisle control that argument. This should be, we're doing it the right way. We're the ones that are providing safety and security not only for our country, but the economy, and that's going to help everybody as we get that going.
So you talked earlier a little bit about how your state works with businesses on the regulatory environment. I think we're expecting in 2024 a significant regulatory onslaught from Washington on this industry. Can you explain what the Oklahoma model is and how we can get the regulatory environment in a place where, of course, we're protecting the environment and, of course, we're doing everything we can to meet consumer needs? But how do you do it in Oklahoma, and what are the lessons that we can take from Oklahoma and bring to Washington?
First off, as a CEO, I tell all my regulatory agencies that they need to work with business, that we're never going to play gotcha. it feels like when you're in business that these agencies can come at you and they never want to be clear with the rules. They want to be able to play gotcha, be able to fine you based on your balance sheet. That's not the way we do it in Oklahoma. That's un-American. We need to be clear with the rules, set a level playing field, let businesses go compete. That's all that we want. We want a level playing field. So I think that's important for us to talk about as well. But the other thing that I want to throw in the conversation is in Oklahoma, we're also focusing on critical minerals. And because of the bedrock oil and gas nature of our state and the affordable, reliable energy grid, businesses are moving here. I mean, we've got EV companies moving and lithium-ion battery recycling companies moving to our state. I wrote an op-ed in the Wall Street Journal about the need for federal law about critical minerals and maybe a national stockpile and unplugging from China. And in Oklahoma, because of our business-friendly environment, we now are leaning in and we have the first ever mineral to magnet manufacturer. So it's a new process. Magnets go into your cell phones, they go into F-35 fighters. So a company called USA Rare Earth is located in Stillwater to be able to do a new process. And that's always been done in China. That whole supply chain's in China. And I think people are starting to talk about that. But you have to get some conversations going with your regulatory agencies as well. We are, with primacy, we're working with the EPA. We'll be, I think, the 4th state to get primacy for Class 6 wells. We've had to line up our Oklahoma law to kind of line up with some of the EPA rules because that's something we're focused on as well in the state of Oklahoma. That's
really big deal. Let's dig a little bit deeper into that. Louisiana just recently got primacy for Class 6 wells and carbon capture. How is Oklahoma thinking about the importance of building a carbon capture infrastructure as well?
Yeah, I mean, if you meet with Governor Burgum in North Dakota, he's talking about what that looks like, and we have some injection wells, we have some expertise in doing that, but also just further exploration of getting more oil and gas out of the ground with injection wells, but also just capturing it and storing it is something that I know companies are looking heavily at. We want to be able to do that in Oklahoma as well.
That's great. So this is state of the state time in all of our state capitals. I'm sure you're working hard on your state of the state right now. What are some non-energy issues that you're focused on as governor right now as well?
Yeah, so the state of state starts for us the first day of session. So it's February 5th, and we've been working on our draft. But really, it's I think to have an honest conversation about how do we become a top 10 state? And that's the vision that I always talk about in Oklahoma. We've already cut taxes. When I took over as governor, we had very little money in savings. We were having teacher walkouts, budget deficits, and just by being fiscally disciplined, I'm in my 6th year now, we have the largest savings account we've ever had. It's over $5 billion. We've cut taxes. I did a school choice bill last year. And school choice, I think, is just so important because school choice shouldn't be just for the rich. It should be for every single family. And so now every single family in Oklahoma has a $7,500 refundable tax credit to go to a school of their choice, whether it's a private school or charter school or whatever. So we're really excited about that piece of it as well. But the American dream is alive and well in Oklahoma. It really is. We're moving the needle. We're moving the needle there, and so we'll continue to talk about some of those fiscal disciplines, more education choice. The other thing I love to share with you on education, I think is important, is listen, if you go to MIT and get an engineering degree, you're going to be great. But there's so many other kids maybe that aren't going to college. There's only 50% of the kids go to college nationally, and 50% don't. So what are we doing with those other kids to make sure that they have an opportunity and they know that their future is going to be super bright? And so we're looking at some of those trade schools. So I set up a school in Norman, Oklahoma, where I went to high school. It's an aviation school. And so if you're a junior in high school and you want to become an aviation mechanic or a pilot, you can go to this one high school, and by the time you graduate, you're an aviation mechanic. And American Airlines has their largest MRO facility in Tulsa, 5,000 employees, and they were just telling me, their CEO and their group was telling me, they said, "Governor, do you know what we start a salary for an A&P mechanic?" And I said, "No." They said 70,000 a year. I went home and told my son, I said, you're going to become an A&P mechanic. But the point is, there's so many great careers out there, and I think that's why we can't pigeonhole everybody into one direction, and that's why I think school choice and more options is good for families, and so that's something that I'm really focused on in Oklahoma, and I'm sure that'll be part of our State of the State.
That's great. Well, Governor, I want to thank you. You are a true visionary for your state, and we're honored to get your perspective from the state of Oklahoma. I think all of us wish that we had a governor like you that has pursued pro-growth policies, but also has recognized the importance of an all-of-the-above energy approach. So thank you for being here.
Thank you so much.